dawned on me, I had this wild idea that I would shoot the whole thing on my phone. This is the actual phone that I shot that film on. It's still the phone I use today to call people and to text and to talk. The other equipment I used was a Zhiyun Smooth 4. It was one of the gimbals that tied in directly to the software that I was using, which was FiLMiC Pro. And then came the sort of daunting task of how to release it. You know, who do we sell it? Does someone buy this kind of thing? Is there festivals for this? I produced it, I shot it, I directed it, and then I also edited it.
I recently connected with a filmmaker in our Facebook group after he posted a trailer for his music documentary, which was shot on an iPhone XS. When I saw the trailer, it really struck me as being exceptionally well made. Then I rented it and I was really blown away. So I invited the director, Shane Drake, to tell us more about the film and how he used the iPhone and FiLMiC Pro. I don't know about you, but I'm always eager to hear how these tools are utilized in experienced hands. Turns out Shane is a professional filmmaker of many years, and it shows. Even doing this interview with him, after I sent him an edit to check over, I got an email back with detailed notes for suggested changes. Mostly for the sake of accuracy. So even with this little interview, I felt like we were working on something important to Shane, which is a sign you're working with a true professional. So for any budding filmmaker out there, this is going to be informative and inspiring. Well, Shane has made an awesome iPhone film, so let's find out how he did it.
My name is Shane Drake. I am a filmmaker. I've been shooting music videos predominantly for the last 20 years. I won my first big award in 2006 at the MTV VMAs for Video of the Year for a music video for a band called Panic at the Disco for a song called I Write Sins, Not Tragedies. And yeah, before then I was making a lot of low budget music videos on the DVX100, which was Panasonic's sort of flagship 24p camera. And so, you know, a lot of my filmmaking career started by finding an inexpensive sort of resource to shoot my films on in the beginning. Obviously, once I won that award, and as my career developed, you know, I used 35mm and 16, and eventually all that shifted straight over to digital. But I'm very used to you know, filmmaking on a medium that's easily accessible and allows you to not need the kind of big budgets that a studio requires to make films. I hit up my buddy Griffin House, who I've known for years and been a fan of since he began. And I sort of just talking about whether he wanted to make a music video. I was like, you know, I'd love to go out on the road with you if you have any tours coming up, and I would love to just shoot that, just get some raw footage and see what we can do. And he was super on board, sent me some of his new music, which I loved. We decided we would do some sort of music video. I'd get on the road, and then as he sent me more tracks, I started to realize that these songs were more soundtrack elements and more scoring elements than they were music video elements. And and maybe that was just a product of where I was artistically and what I was desiring to do, but I decided to see if he was interested in just shooting a documentary. I'm like, you know what, I've always wanted to do a long form. I've always wanted to just go out on the road and just live with an artist for a while. I've done it for music videos, but to do it for a longer period of time and really capture the behind the scenes of who they are, and what they're doing, and what makes them them. And so when I pitched that to him, he was also very excited. I think, truth be told, I think he said he sort of brought him to tears because he's been wanting someone to tell his story for so long. You know, we wanted to keep the price as low as possible. The point wasn't to spend a lot of money, but to have a lot of fun and make a product that is watchable and feels like it has integrity, professionalism. And so I researched all the DSLR options, the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema options. I really wanted to be able to be on a gimbal or sort of a Steadicam apparatus of some sort. And the bigger the camera, the bigger that apparatus needs to be. And the more parts, the more things need to be charged, the less battery life, and the more batteries you're always swapping out, the more cards you're swapping in and swapping out. And then it dawned on me, I had this wild idea that I would shoot the whole thing on my phone. The phone allowed me so much, again, control. It allowed me to not have to have a lot of elements that I had to bring in, other people, other crew, you know, counting on a lot of different equipment. Like, I could really put together a very scaled down Steadicam apparatus that I could just function and use myself. With the phone, I wouldn't have to change cards. I would just have to, you know, dump the footage occasionally so that I would have to, you know, have a clean hard drive. But between that and a pretty significant battery life, like, the process was pretty fluid. I basically was able to shoot anywhere we were because we were on an iPhone. We weren't on a big camera. I didn't opt for one of those things that draws more attention. You know, we could go in the subway. We could go in Times Square and not have issues. We could go in, you know, in just about any area that he was at. It wasn't like we had a big crew with cranes and jibs and dollies like I have certainly captured before for live shows for bigger artists. But for this, our footprint was so small and our needs were so small that the venues were very accommodating, and it allowed us to get a lot of footage I probably wouldn't ordinarily have been able to get. It allowed me to focus on him and allowed him to be more natural with me, because it's not like I have a big crew and light and apparatus set up. I just have an iPhone on him, which we're all very accustomed to speaking to these days. And so it allowed me to get his most natural self. The other equipment I used was a Zhiyun Smooth 4. It was one of the gimbals that tied in directly to the software that I was using, which was FiLMiC Pro. Absolutely love it. I've been using it since it came out. It was fantastic. It doesn't work great with the new phones because they're a little heavy for it, but the XS worked great with a little counterweight. I chose to do all available lighting, sort of throwback to Dogma filmmaking back in the mid-90s. I didn't want to bring lights, and I didn't want to have to get permission to use lights on stage, so I just found a way to use available lights. So wherever we were, whether we were in the car driving, or we were in a venue shooting a show, or if I was, you know, walking down the street, it was everything in that movie was available light. I used a Rode shotgun mic, but what I found with that mic was when it was attached to the gimbal in coordination with the phone, sometimes you got a buzz, which I was able to get out using Audition, but it was a pain in the ass. So, in my next project, which I'll talk about later, I opted to not use the Rode shotgun mic and use the wireless mics, the Go mics that they have, which are awesome. I mostly shot off the native audio, our native microphone in the iPhone. So most of the audio you hear in the film is from the iPhone. I did have a second iPhone, which I used for the second leg of his tours, just for the live stuff. We ended up purchasing an iPhone XS Max, because it had a bigger hard drive. You could have like 500 gigs of storage. And we used that, and I brought on a buddy to assist and do second camera work. So when I got the app, I played with all the settings and then really tried to figure out how to get the best slow-mo and how to get the best, you know, footage with as little amount of grain as possible. Obviously, you know, with the iPhone we have an aperture issue, and so we're always going to have issues with low lighting. I also used ND filters when I was shooting outside. And again, this ties in with how I use FiLMiC Pro. I wanted to shoot the whole film in 24 frames and 1/48 shutter because I wanted the 180-degree sort of simulation so that it really felt filmic. Honestly, just got a cheap variable ND filter that I clipped on to the phone for most of the exterior shots, and it worked beautifully. The highest bit rate and the highest, you know, the FiLMiC Pro Extreme, and I shot it all in 4K. I also decided not to use log. I purchased it, but I didn't shoot it because what I found with log is it just kind of cheats you into a mid zone that you still have to color correct your way out of. And I'm like, I'd rather not have to color correct myself out of something and just shoot natural and know what I'm getting from the get. And from there, you know, I'm already in a place I know that I like. With log, I feel like it just sort of cheats the parameters to make you think like you're getting more stop, but really you have to color correct for those in post anyway and you end up losing them. So I'd rather just know from the get what I have, and then from there, you know, take the color correction where the footage will allow it to go, which is what I did. You know, I don't mind a little bit of grain. What I find on the iPhone when we shoot in FiLMiC Pro and you get some of that low light stuff and some of the grain you see ends up feeling a lot like 16mm film. And I like that. I think that's cool looking. So I don't really mind a little bit of grain, but too much can feel like a digital mess. And so, you know, I tried to keep everything I shot at night under 100 ISO, but if I had to go higher, I'd let myself go up to 200, but I never went over 200. So everything at night is shot under 200 ISO. And if I really needed the extra boost, I would drop my shutter to 1/24. Again, there's a little more motion tracers in that, but again, like, it's minimal and you really don't notice it in the footage when put next to the 1/48. I also wanted to make sure that the film felt raw and natural, so I didn't do a lot of color correction. I tried to keep as much of it intact with what we actually shot as possible. And when it comes to sound, I did a lot of sound tweaking in Audition and in Adobe Premiere. But honestly, I'm not an incredible sound editor, so the sound is probably the biggest weak link of this film. But that being said, it still feels raw. You still get the idea, at least I believe so, that you feel like you're there. You feel like you're with him. You feel like you actually are enjoying these experiences with Griffin.
You probably noticed there's a man standing next to me on stage. I'm supposed to pretend like he's not here. It's kind of hard because he has his camera in my face all the time, so.
So this film was shot for about $20,000. That's 20 days on the road, that's Airbnbs, that's hotels, that's food, that's gas. We traveled in a Sprinter, which our executive producer owned, and so we traveled around in a Sprinter for both those legs of the tour. And John was gracious enough to be our driver for all that, which was fun. Again, the equipment costs were minimal, but you know, we needed hard drives and we needed to get a new MacBook, so we had sort of an updated platform to actually edit on. And for some, it's still a lot of money, and I get that, you know, but you know, for the scale of projects that I'm used to working on, that was very low budget, and it felt very grassroots and very manageable. I did almost all the rules. It wasn't like we hired people to do all the different things. You know, I produced it, I shot it, I directed it, and then I also edited it. I watch every minute of the footage that I shot. And as I'm watching, I'm writing notes, and I had about an 80-page document just of notes. And what that does is, it gives me, obviously, an indication of what I need to go back to, but I can put key words in what I'm writing, and then when I'm done and I have that whole 80-page document, I can type in a keyword like Griffin's mom, and it'll take me to all of the pages that talk about Griffin's mom, so I don't have to search and remember where the footage is. And so for me though, I really enjoyed it because it gave me a chance to go relive those moments. And not only relive them, but really dive into them and process them, because as I'm looking at them and as I'm watching them, I'm writing them. I'm taking notes, things I thought were good or great or bad. So the edit took all of about a month and a half. I spent the next few months then just really honing in on getting people's opinions and trying to see family and friends and see what they thought of it. All the process from concept to shooting to editing to releasing to, you know, gauging results was about a year. And then came the sort of daunting task of how to release it. You know, who do we sell it? Does someone buy this kind of thing? Is there festivals for this? We decided, since this whole thing had been DIY from the beginning, it had been very grassroots, that we wanted to keep that in our distribution. So we decided to self-release on video on demand. And so we released it on Vimeo and released it on Amazon Prime Video Direct. It's a hard process getting people to pay attention to a movie or even pay $3 to rent it, let alone like 10 to buy it. Like it's really like a commitment for people, because what if it sucks? What if this makes me not like my favorite artist again? Or what if, what if this is just a big waste of time? And people are, very discerning about where they put their entertainment money. And so in January, we decided to change the Amazon offering to Prime members. And that really opened up the door to a lot of viewers. And, we've since amassed almost 60 reviews. I think all of them but 1 or 5 stars. And the one that isn't is also super entertaining to read. So it's fine. John and I, my business partner, decided after we made Rising Star that we were going to make another project. We wanted to do something else. We had so much fun, and it was so easy, and so we decided that we were going to start shooting a docuseries. It's a 5-part docuseries where we will focus each episode, which is about 45 minutes to an hour long, on a new artist and follow them on tour for a leg of their tour and capture them, capture their music, capture the shows, and do sort of a mini version of what we did with Rising Star, but for multiple artists in multiple genres across a series platform. And so for this docuseries, we again used the iPhone. This time we actually bought phones specifically for the filming, so I didn't have to use my personal phone. So we bought 2 iPhone 11 Pros. A better camera because now the tight lens actually has a better f-stop. The f-stop on the tight lens for the iPhone XS is really rough. It's really slow and ended up being really hard to use and incorporate with the wide angle. I don't use the super wide angle that much. It is in the movie, in the docuseries a little bit, but it gets very grainy because again the f-stop's not great. It's a slow lens. I switched to the M2 gimbal, which is an awesome gimbal. I love it. And then for this, I did do a lot of my audio on the Rode Go microphones. They're incredible. I think that there's a lot of pros to using an iPhone camera. It's in your hand and ready to go right now. There's a learning curve, but it's manageable. It's something you can figure out, and you can figure out in relatively short order. You don't require a crew. The equipment that attaches to it is easy to research. On the different forums. Some of the cons, obviously, an aperture issue. That's not going to change so long as the phones have to shoot through a hole this big because of the nature of the size constraints of the phone apparatus. But that's fine. That's not been problematic enough for me to say ditch it, and obviously I have projects where I shoot on the big red cameras and Arri cameras, and obviously that's a different experience, and that's something that's, it's a few $100,000 for 3 minutes as opposed to something you can do on your existing phone camera for free. We often see the story of the Coldplays or the Rolling Stones, or these huge success stories where we feel like, wow, that's so cool that they went from here to here, and that story is an amazing story, but I feel like it's been told. It's been told often, it's been told well, and I don't know that I feel like I necessarily had anything at the time to add to that narrative. And we've also heard of the sort of shining stars that burned out, and we see these sort of sad stories of crash and burn, and again, that's another story that I think has been told well, and I don't know that I had anything new to bring to that, but what I've found is that there's this middle ground, there's this life of an artist, a touring artist, that, and there's countless artists in this category that make a living on the road, playing shows to anywhere from 50 to 500 people, and this is what they do day in, day out, sometimes up to 200, 300 times a year. I wanted to capture his humanity as well as just the subject of what this world of being a traveling musician, not in superstardom and not in failure, but in the middle. There was no better subject at the time than Griffin. He fit that bill so perfectly. Obviously there's some lows, there's some highs, but that's the reality of any career. We all have the highs and lows. We all have that thing we aspired to, and did we pursue it? Did we pursue it for a little bit and then quit? Did we pursue it to our fullest and we almost reached it, or we did reach it, or we overshot it? Like the levels of that story can be told by everyone in different disciplines, you know, whether you're an electrician or a teacher or anything from, or being a doctor or being an activist, any level of dream that's existed in your heart that you pursued to some degree with varying success or failure allows you to relate to this movie. I didn't formally train in film school. I went to school to be a doctor. I was pre-med, but I decided I didn't want to go to med school, and I was a scientist for a year. I was a biochemist, and I hated it. It didn't suit who I was or what I wanted to do. So I ended up sort of figuring out through odd jobs over the next few years a path, you know. I ended up moving to New York, did some acting, and it was through that and watching the filmmakers that were hiring me that I decided that directing was probably a career path that suited my skill set, my interests, and actually made me really excited for the first time about a career. I just started shooting little short films on little JVC mini DV cams before I even got to 24p, because that wasn't even a thing when I first started. And I just started shooting little short films, and I loved it. I had such a blast. And so as that developed, I eventually got mentored by a guy that was a music video director, and he sort of showed me the ropes of how to put that together. I should put in there, so one of my first sort of steps into that business with that mentor was learning to edit for him. And so that's when I learned Final Cut Pro from version 2 on. And that was sort of integral to my filmmaking, because I think as an editor, you really learn the recipe of a film. And you learn how to put that recipe together in a way that makes sense, which allows you then to direct better clips to fit into those resources. It gives you better ingredients and lets you understand what's needed in those ingredients. After I ended up starting a company in the early 2000s called Red Van Pictures, and again, within a couple years, I was shooting videos that were on MTV, and again, I was doing a lot of this on the DVX-100, and things just sort of evolved and snowballed and grew and really gave me a lucrative career that I'm very proud of. But again, for me, I've always been trying to just chase what that bigger and better thing is for me. What is it that makes me excited as a filmmaker, and what challenges me, and what makes me want to dig deeper. And it's been interesting to reflect on when I had more of a grassroots sort of entry into the industry. I was way more excited because I had all the tools at my fingertips without needing to have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars and a bunch of people signing off on the okays. When I had the sort of control at my fingertips is when I usually did my best work. And when I was, certainly whether I did my best work or not, it's when I was most excited. And so when mobile filmmaking started making its presence known, really in the early, around 2013, 14, 15, you see movies like Tangerine, and you see directors like Steven Soderbergh jumping on board. You realize there's this opportunity to go grassroots again, but to do it with an incredible tool that far outshines any of the grassroots resources I started with when I started my career 20 years ago. So mobile filmmaking has been very exciting to me, and so I can't wait to see what it develops into and to be a part of that. I'm really grateful for Simon for wanting to make this little behind the scenes thing for my film. I hope you guys get a chance to go watch it. Again, the film is called Rising Star. It's about an artist named Griffin House. It's available now on Amazon Prime. It's also on Vimeo if you want to just go rent it. But for those who are Amazon Prime subscribers, it's available now. And yeah, I hope you just if you're a filmmaker, keep making films, keep shooting, even if you're terrible at it. Like, I certainly have had my moments of being terrible in the different sort of disciplines that I've chosen to pursue in my life. The difference is I kept pushing through till I wasn't terrible. And maybe you're incredible out the gate and fantastic. I can't wait to watch your film, but I gotta say, keep creating, keep building on your reel, because art is is a fluid process. It's an evolutionary process, and you're going to grow. You're going to learn from every project you pursue. Whether the project's something of interest or not, you're going to learn something. So shoot, 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 create, create, create. Thanks for watching this. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you are going to go and make something spectacular of your own.
My friend Shane, who was filming this documentary, I met him in LA and a few years ago, and we kind of had a connection, hit it off, and stayed in touch. And we had a connection even before we knew this, but we just said hello and exchanged phone numbers. We met through my friend, and just a chance encounter. And he texted me after he got my number. He's like, "Hey man, I actually know you. I picked your record up in 2004 at Amoeba Records in Los Angeles and Hollywood." And I was like, "No shit, that's awesome, man." So we kept in touch, and he just kind of kept texting over the years. He came to Nashville. He makes music videos for a living, so we hooked up a couple times in Nashville and hung out and watched some music together. And then I sent him my record, and he started listening to some of the songs and thought about doing a music video. And then he had an idea of like, "Hey, how about we scrap the music video idea and just do like a whole movie?" I said, "That sounds fun. How much would that cost?" Then he said a figure that I couldn't even think about, so I had a friend who I knew might be interested, so I called him. I have a friend John in St. Louis, and kind of a very unique character, probably one of the there's not too many people you can call up and just say, "Hey, we're thinking about making a movie. Do you want to put up a bunch of money and make it happen?" And he was like, "Sure, I'm in." So I don't know how that really happened, but this was like a month ago that we found, had this idea, and John said yes, and then all of a sudden we're on the road making a movie. So this is a song about LA for the song from the guy.